14th, Policies and Priorities Committee meeting to order. Approval of the agenda, please. Councillor Dussault.
That all items in the August 14th, 2023 Policies and Priorities Committee meeting agenda be approved as presented.
Seconder. Councillor Norbury. All in favor? Carried. Adoption of minutes for July 10th, 2023. Policies and Priorities Committee meeting minutes. The recommendation, please. Councillor Norbury.
That the July 10th, 2023 Policies and Priorities Committee meeting minutes be adopted as presented.
Seconder. Councillor Dussault. Any errors or omissions? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Any business arising from the minutes? Staff? Council? Okay. Moving on to delegations. Tumbler Ridge Youth Service Society. TRSS board members to present an update to council on the society's services. Okay, we'll just move 5.1. We'll go to 5.2. Tumbler Ridge Community Forest Corp. Duncan McKellar to present to council the history of the wildfire mitigation programs. Duncan, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, welcome. Thanks everybody for letting me do my short presentation. I thought I would do a little presentation to staff and council there, just because there's some new folks and haven't spoken to you for a while. And I also hear from Chris that the council may engage the government on this topic of wildfire around your community, considering the latest fires and so on. So I did send you some paperwork on the topic. Hope you had time to read it. Try to keep it brief, down to a page or two, and a few maps. Did you manage to get that in your portfolios?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, great. So I'll just go through probably just the first page there to give you a bit of a summary, just to give you some history on wildfire management in Tumbler Ridge. So as far as I know, it started around 2006, where they did a wildfire protection plan at that time. And between 2007 to 2012 or so, they treated those areas that were into the guise of that community wildfire protection plan. So there were some small areas that were harvested and cut over around the town, and you're probably aware of most of them. There's maps to that effect that I've supplied as well. And around when the community forest got started, around 2011 or 2012, that was when there was that big opening right beside the Trent Hotel, and the town was not happy with that. And the prescription said, I believe, to harvest all the pine, and that's all it was there was pine, and so they clear cut it, and subsequently that project got terminated. But he was just about done all the prescription treatments anyways. But the only one that wasn't completed was there was some town lands around the pond block. So that's the first one the community forest took on around 2012 or so, and we did extensive consultation with the community and council and so on, because they just had a bad prescription go bad on them. So, you know, it was important we did this one right. So they did that in 2014, I think, or so. Select harvested around the town pond, and we also gave some suggestions around possible trails for mountain bikes and or cross-country skiing, etc. And it turns out that as time went by, you guys decided to do a nice interpretive trail behind the tour center there, and that looks excellent. So that was a win-win for everybody. In 2014, around the same time, we commissioned another community wildfire protection plan just to get updated again. And it was built or written by a company out of Smithers. And from that plan, we looked at areas that were a high to medium hazard that we could do prescriptions on. We did those three areas, one on the Gulf Road, around 26 hectares, the larger one north of town on the horse stable area, and then the one east of town behind the light industrial site there. Once those were completed, we asked the wildfire experts to come and have a look and see what we had accomplished, and if there was any other treatment areas that needed to be treated. Now, if you look at some of the maps I provided, there is a big colorful red and orange map that sort of has a town on it. And so those are the high areas. And if you can superimpose back and forth where the town is, those are some of the areas that we treated. Now we missed some high areas still around the golf course mainly. Wildfire branch said, well, and also public opinion didn't want us, of course, to harvest the around the golf course anymore, which makes perfect sense. And they didn't want us to harvest down by the river, right on the steep bank of the river by the golf course. They said that that wouldn't really reduce fire, even though it's a high hazard there. If a fire happens to come from the west and jumps the river, it'll scoot up that steep hillside by, the golf course, and it'll just go right over. It'll just go right over the golf course and on it'll go. So they said you shouldn't treat that area. Plus, it's very steep and riparian zones. So we kind of got the green light after we did these 3 or 4 larger area prescriptions that we pretty much completed what we thought was, some protection to mitigate wildfire damage. Now, of course, it's not going to stop a wildfire from perhaps coming into town. The latest experts are saying that wildfires are now jumping up to 8 kilometers in their sparking. So their ashes are coming 5 miles or 8 kilometers ahead of the wall of fire. So, a 2-kilometer radius, even if you clear cut all the way around Tumbler Ridge, you're not really going to necessarily exempt ashes from coming in and lighting a home on fire. But it does provide, hopefully, if it ever gets to some fire close to town, it'll slow the fire down and provide folks to action those fires and minimize any damage around the community. So on with that, around 2021, the government, again, because of public pressure probably around the wildfires in the province and now in Canada, they sent out some folks from North Vancouver to do some more prescriptions. And I sent a map that's more of an aerial photography map that shows 3 or 4 areas around Tumbler Ridge that they focused some suggested prescriptions on to treat. So last year we went in with wildfire people from Prince George, not the consultant so much, but from the wildfire people in Prince George or the Prince George region, and tromped through these sites and determined that they're really not, even though the government went ahead and did this all on their own pretty much, they weren't really going to minimize fire. And the ones that are going up on the east side of town, for example, or up that steep hill, and of course that's in conjunction with the bike trails that are being built there. And as you probably all know, fire doesn't go downhill as fast as uphill. There is some opportunity there that perhaps could be treated selectively, small areas. It's very scenic there too. So, but what we tromped through there was so much deciduous and stuff. It didn't seem that it's going to carry a fire, or a treatment wouldn't reduce the fire substantially on those areas. There's a couple south of town, and those are mostly outside of the community forest. There's a little bit of one that's in, but they're also in what is looked at as OGMAs, or old growth management areas. So those are supposed to be left alone, and those aren't in our cutting pattern anyway, so we wouldn't be managing those. And then there's a couple of sort of where we harvested that by the industrial area around town that's between the highway and the area we harvested. And again, it's more of a sprucey, black spruce, open stand, kind of wet in there. And they said that at this time they don't see advantages to doing any treatments in there. So that was a bit of a political, in my view, a bit of a political prescription plan. And the local people said it really isn't worth doing any prescriptions that these consultants from North Vancouver suggested that the town did. I'll stop there for a moment because that's a lot in a hurry there. But do you have any questions now, or do you want me to keep going telling you about a little bit about the fire this year?
Council, have any questions in regards to what we've heard so far? You can keep going, Duncan, please.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. So I just provided a bit of an update on the second page on the fire. The fire went into the community forest about 2,300 hectares. And I don't think I provided a map of it, but we have it mapped. We have the perimeter mapped. And it was a very hot fire, as you can see the imagery there. It was just torching hot. And thank goodness the wind must have changed and saved the town, because that was coming at you folks there. So just an update, it burnt 2 of our 3 plantations that we planted some years ago. The 2 were pretty much completely burnt. The 3rd one was 20% burnt. So we can reforest those next spring. We have some trees ready to go, and we don't have to pay for that, but we do have to do some administration around getting the trees back growing there. I'm just reading ahead here. So much of the forest that did burn, we went up in a helicopter to make sure that we weren't leaving, stands of timber that were mature, that were ready to be harvested, but had some damage, and you could still sell this timber. But it turns out, looking at the wood that did burn, it burned so hot you wouldn't be able to sell it if you could. And secondly, most of the fire went through sort of younger stands or small diameter stands, even though they might have been 15, 18 meters tall. It just burnt them so hot that you couldn't sell them. They wouldn't buy them. So we don't see any salvage opportunities in the burn there as far as selling it to a sawmill goes. And finally, what's the impact to the community forest as far as, you burnt some of our trees down, is we will probably have to do a re-inventory sometime in the next couple of years to see how our cut gets changed a little bit, because now we have lost some stands that are maybe 60 years old, some 20-year-old stands, et cetera. And we have to see how that impacts our fiber flow in the long run. But that's just something we'll manage in the next few years. So yeah, that was just a quick update on, I think you guys might be speaking to some folks when you go down this fall to the usual September meeting with the government, and I thought this might be handy for you guys to have.
Yeah, appreciate that, Duncan.
Right, okay. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can get Chris to ask me, or you can ask me directly later on, or we don't plan on doing any particular wildfire management planning or prescriptions presently. We will be looking at that hillside a bit going forward to see if there's some opportunities without, in conjunction with the bike folks, and not ruining their good work and so on. So yeah, it's just it's really a tough spot. You guys live right in a forest. So we're just trying to do our best to minimize any impacts that might come your way.
Yeah, totally appreciate that. Okay, any questions from council? I have one, Duncan, and it's in regards to that burnt area. When you talk about the 2,300 hectares, will that get reforested, or are you just gonna let that reforest itself?
Well, yeah, most of the area that burnt either was a plantation from years ago, West Fraser's or somebody, so there might be 20-year-old trees, and there's some, like I said, early or older that are maybe 100 years old. Depends how hot it burnt. Every stand will be a bit different, but they will be monitoring it. If you drive up north and see the fire that happened then, you can see all the young trees that came up underneath that fire. So anticipate a lot of that to happen, because it was mainly pine stands that burnt. So then mostly we'd be left alone unless they're plantations that they're not old enough that they can reforest themselves, because they don't have enough cones on their branches. But so the government will be working as well with the government on some of those stands, because we want to make sure everything starts to go back as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you for that. Just in regards to when we talk about fire mitigation, and I see the letter that was addressed to Mayor and Council from 2022. Do we re-look at bringing someone back up just to make sure that the subscriptions we've already done are still holding good enough, or we need to be redone?
Well, eventually you will have to have a look at all the areas that were treated, because, yeah, as you know, the forest slowly grows back. So especially some of the ones that are larger, to make sure they're just not getting, thrown to fire. So that's probably 5 or 10 years away. As far as, prescribing, prescriptions or work in stands that have not been treated at all, there's really, the government did try that and it didn't work out. So there's really no areas that I can see that we can work on within the 2 kilometers anyway of the Tumbler Ridge that would be effective.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions from council? Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Kakaka. Thanks for coming in, Duncan. On the topic of wildfire mitigation, would it be worthwhile for us to send a letter to the Ministry of Forests or have that as like a advocacy piece to look at more wildfire mitigation plans for our area? Do you think that would be a worthwhile venture? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that more physical treatments on the ground would create a lot of benefit. I do think that small communities might benefit from engaging the government on sort of playing a larger role in managing a fire if it does happen. I know, of course, there's a fire, you got a fire chief there and so on, but we're really not set up to run out there and put out a wildfire. You have to have special training and special equipment and all the rest of it. So, some small community forests have gone to have training some folks in town that could respond to a small fire. I'm not talking about running out to that one that just happened, but a small lightning strike that's available with maybe have a water tank and a little machine or a small skidder or something that could run out there and put it out. The other option is to maybe do some more management around providing some water, easy water to get at. I know there's rivers there for the helicopters to put their buckets in, but are they always deep enough? I don't know. There might be some places where we can do some reconnaissance and say, okay, here, this place in the river, or maybe we can make some little dump areas that would hold water in them that would be close to town within a few kilometers that machines could get to. So those sort of ideas I was throwing around and just seeing if those would stick with other community forests or other small communities. So those are some ideas I would think is like, how do we action a small fire as a community instead of waiting for the brigade to show up the next day type of thing. But it's difficult because the government doesn't want, really, they want to control it from the ministerial level, the provincial level. And I get why they do that because they can control, they've lots of equipment and lots of assets. But, some small communities, what are you going to do? Do you have I know I work with another small community west of town, it's a recreation community, and we have pumps. We have water pumps we bought, they're ready to go. We're trained on how to use them. We can get out to a small fire because we have the lake right there. But so those sort of things, should we have a little brigade that can go out and fight a wildfire in Tumbler Ridge? And maybe they are the volunteer group, or maybe it's another group. But it's certainly different training than your fire people do now. And I'm sure the chief would say that too.
Follow up, Councilmember? Okay. Mr. Woodward, if I may, if we could just have maybe the chief just respond. I don't want to speak on behalf of our fire department because I'm not the inside guy, but he is. And in regards to training, when we talk about wildland fire or that we just have some input when we have a delegation like this. If we may be able to hear from our Protective Service Director.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes. Director of Protective Services, Mr. Curry, respond to that.
Certainly can, Mr. Woodward. So, Mayor and Council, through the CAO. So training-wise, as Duncan alluded to, we're not the subject matter experts when it comes to wildland firefighting, but that's not to say that we do not take training and coursework in order to prevent and deal with wildland fires. This includes both the minimum standards that wildfire would require, as well as it's an S115 course now. It has to do with sprinkler. So the sprinkler courses are the course for sprinkler setup that we saw during our wildfire event. Just touching on a bit of what Council was talking about, the district is actually undertaking a community wildfire risk reduction plan as part of our capital projects this year through UBCM. And a lot of this is going to involve input from the Chief Fire Prevention Officer from the Prince George Fire Branch. So they'll be up here. Understandably, they're busy right now, but as soon as they get some time, it's going to be they're going to be up in our area doing a lot of the groundwork that you were just alluding to, looking at what we can do for our own resiliency so that Tumbler Ridge is better prepared for future events.
Thank you for that. Okay, are there any more questions for Duncan from council? All right, thank you very much, Duncan, for joining us tonight and giving us the overview and the maps and stuff, and then also the overview in regards to the fire. I appreciate that. And if there's something we can do on behalf of the community forest in regards to the UBCM, just reach out to staff. We definitely want to make sure that we protect that 2,300 hectares that we've lost in that fire. So anything we can do there, if you can just reach out to us, would be great.
You bet. And if you guys, if there is a debrief on the fire and how the community responded to it and what went well and what didn't, I sure would like to be involved with that if I can, because I probably provide some interesting information or hindsight about that. There's some interesting. Everything should have a bit of a debrief on how they did, and there's lots of chatter on Facebook about that stuff and what went well and what didn't in the town and so on. So we could all learn from that.
Yeah, 100%. And there will be, we actually brought it up at a couple of meetings ago, and I have it on the agenda tonight in regards to a Let's Talk, more or less making that all in regards to the evacuation to that wildfire. So when we know a date, we'll totally invite you up, Duncan.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, have a good evening, everybody.
You as well.
All right. Bye now.
Okay, we're going to move on to the Tumbler Ridge Youth Service Society, TRSS Board Members to present an update to Council and Society's services. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me? Good.
Sure can.
So I've been on the board with TRSS, I'm Sky Stravell. I've been on the board with TRYSS since I was about 19 years old, so 5 years now. Pretty much since the date I was no longer allowed to attend the youth center, I became part of the board. So first of all, the TR Youth Center Services Society would like to thank all the district of TR for their generous financial support, provision of Wi-Fi and use of the youth center space over the past several years. For those of you who are unaware of what TRYSS is all about, they are a nonprofit society of 6 enthusiastic volunteers that run the youth center located in the Tumbler Ridge Community Center that serves as a drop-in center for youth grades 5 to 12 and has often provided off-site special activities for these youth as well. Over the years, many visiting sports teams and summer visitors have been hosted to our center. The center runs 52 weeks of the year during the school year. The center operates 25 and a half hours a week, afternoons and evenings, Tuesdays through Saturdays. During July and August, the center is open 10 hours a week, Tuesdays through Fridays, for 2.5 hours each evening. Decreased summer hours are due to lower attendance because of summer student jobs, vacations, and interest in other outdoor activities. Trent?
Hi, I'm Trent. I'm the board chair. So at the center, there's a bunch of things for kids to do. There's a pool table, foosball, ping pong, a concession for people who want something to snack on. There's a magnetic dartboard. We have an Xbox 360, as well as a Wii gaming system with games as well as movies for the kids to watch. There's board games and card games, sport equipment that the youth can borrow. From like a basketball and a volleyball, soccer ball, tennis balls, as well as rackets, as well as an adult there to supervise at all times. Over the year, we host a number of regular activities, including free bingo with Subway or President Choice grocery cards as prizes. In June, we have end of grade 4 and 6 celebrations, and as well as when over the holidays, we have holiday-themed celebrations, so Christmas, Halloween treats, New Year's treats, Winter Carnival dances, as well as a bigger version of bingo that happens during the Winter Carnival. Prior to COVID, youth we were taking the kids out on outings to other communities to attend, say, going to Dawson to go bowling, or going to Grand Prairie to movie. We were going to skate parks, swimming pools, going to skiing and snowboarding in Fowler, I think, and then, or at Powder King. We were actually in the process of planning a trip to Chetwynd for the chainsaw carving competition and the open Sky art exhibit in June of this year, but that had to be canceled because there was nobody in town due to our previous conversation. But now that we're coming to the end of summer, and we hopefully aren't going to be evacuated again, and hopefully there's not going to be a major outbreak of COVID again, we're hoping to start doing more activities moving forward. The first one actually just happened on Sunday, where 10 of the kids were joined on, and we went to the Fall Fair in Dawson Creek. So fundraising for these excursions generally comes from corporate sponsors as well as fundraising efforts. And with, again, hopefully no COVIDs and evacuations, we can move to some of the fundraising events, activities that we were doing previously. So the Wake-a-thon, as well as games like KGB and Dodgeball, which aren't necessarily fundraisers, but they are activities for the kids. Our mission is to empower youth to make healthy choices for today and tomorrow. And to that end, we provide programs and services that promote character development of youth in a fun, supervised, safe environment that allows them to participate in social, community, recreational, cultural, gaming, and traveling activities that fulfills their needs and interests. We believe that it's crucial to have the center and related activities be youth-driven and not to impose adult contrived programming on students who simply sometimes just want to hang out with their friends after school. The most recent fee-for-service contract that we had with the district was to include 2020, 2021, and 2022. Attendance was high in 2020 with 629 people in January, 841 in February, and 329 in the first half of March. But then COVID came along and closed the doors, just as we were actually planning a ski trip. So the center was closed for 8 months, which accounts for the surplus of funds that we've had, which is why, you know, even though 2023 was not in that grant year, it meant that we just had a lot of money kicking around to keep running. We put in place during COVID, when we reopened, you know, the usual, we had permission forms. There were separate cohorts that we created so that people could attend. There was sign-in and sign-outs. We sanitized aggressively. There was social distancing, just to name a few. And some of these measures are still in place to avoid youth getting sick just from, you know, hanging out with their friends. The center reopened in November 13th of 2020, but there was a lot of the older kids didn't show up. It was mostly the younger kids. That has changed, and over the last couple of months, we've had lots of the older kids come back. So as of June 2023, 120 youth have been regularly attending the youth center across all grades. We've got 17 new grade 5s and 6s already over the summer. And now that all these people are coming back, we're hoping that we can restart the youth council, or that's the plan. And that consists of at least 2 youth from each grade to meet and to generate ideas. Again, we don't want to impose things on them. We want to hear from them what they want to do for activities. You know, some of those thoughts include skiing and snowboarding trips, obviously, once it starts to snow. We're planning on doing the community movie nights again. Even though the world has shifted, like 3 years ago when we were running them, you could get a pre-release DVD. So when Bolt 2, you know, the Electric Boogaloo came out, there was about a month and a half of a window where we could show it to the kids, and it wasn't in theaters and you couldn't get it on any of the streaming services. Of course, in the last few years, a lot of that has changed, and there's now almost no gap. Like movies that are in the theaters are actually coming to streaming services. So we're not expecting to see a lot of people showing up, but we are looking at that as less of a fundraising activity and more of a chance for the students to do things as a service, right? Teaching them to take concession, to run the door, to teach them how to do these things where they have to interact with people, and giving them just this taste of a job opportunity. So, when the youth center has been discussed at council previously, earlier this year's, we just wanted, there was the issue around safety was brought up. So we just wanted to say that, there is adult supervision at all time. The board coordinators and relief staff all have to have police record checks. All attendees have to provide signed permission forms and give their contact information. Students are signed in and out for contact tracing. Sanitization continues. The coordinator currently holds her standard first aid certificate. The climbing wall, which kind of sat there for a while, and the ropes got a little old. Well, we've got new ropes, and it's been inspected, and it's open. It's now open to the public. We've got behavioral expectations that are posted for the kids with consequences for infringement. Severe infractions take a restorative justice format where parents, guardians, the students, the coordinator, and a board member meet to review the episode and develop a plan for youth to repair harm and earn their way back into the center community. We have an operating manual which outlines operating procedures, which is updated regular. And the plan is so that students can enjoy a non-judgmental, fun, and welcoming environment where respect, courtesy, and compassion are modeled and encouraged. The basketball courts, the lights are on in the summer, after the snow's gone. That was a community center activity because, the community center is not just the teen center, sorry. The teen center is not just what happens within that wall, but there's kind of this soft expansion zone, which includes the skate park, which includes the volleyball courts, which includes the basketball center. So we're looking for, we don't want to just bring people into there and lock them down, but, give them the option to go out and just play a game of pickup basketball. There were concerns raised, again, at the last meeting about, people hearing of, oh, this kid said this and about they were treated poorly. These things are not making it back to us as the board or even our coordinator. So these are things that, it's, I don't think anybody has it posted in their business, but the idea is, if you have good things to say it publicly. If you've had a bad experience, talk to us. We need to know about it because we cannot address these things if we do not hear about it. So there is a flow of information. We have Councillor Hoffman, who is our liaison. So if you guys are hearing stuff about things that are happening at the teen center, talk to Councillor Hoffman. And he will pass it on to us. And then finally, we're moving next year. We're going to be coming back to ask for a 3-year grant and aid as well. And we just hope that council will support us in continuing to run the society, to do the good work that we're doing, and to help the youth of this community become better adjusted adults. Any questions?
Thanks very much, Trent and Jenna and Sky, for coming in tonight. Councillor Julik.
Yes, I would echo that. Thanks for coming in. I know it's not always easy to sit up there and And I've seen Jenna out and about and working, and I know Sky's name from school, so I'm happy to see some young people on the board there. So I will agree with you, Trent, that the concerns that I hear probably haven't gone back to you, even though that's generally the way I tend to address that. So just to be specific, who is the first person to, so for example, what I hear is there are young people who are not comfortable coming in through the doors on the west end there because there's older kids there smoking or hanging around or something like that. So who would you say somebody should address with that? Is that a board thing or is that a director thing?
I mean, so most of the operational stuff gets handled by our coordinator, by Dawn, basically. So I guess it depends on the seriousness of it. If kids are uncomfortable because there's kids smoking, mention it to Dawn, and so she can be, a little bit more attentive, and so she can get out there with the broom to shoo those people away, right? If that doesn't help, talk to Ron, and he'll bring it to the board, and we can see if there's any things that we can do to put strictures and structures in place that allow us to, I don't know, draw a pink line, around the door saying, no smoking within this pink boundary, right?
Well, and I think it's not necessarily even the smoking. I just know when I was in grade 5 and there were some grade 10s standing there, you didn't really want to go past the grade 10s. Not that they've said or done anything, they're just scary beings.
And not to say, we've got, colored folks enter through the back door, but there are there's three places where people can come into the teen center, right? So, it's not like they're sitting there going, "You shall not pass," right? But,
Yeah.
there are options, and we can deal with that, but in the meantime, come through the front door.
Absolutely. Maybe those 5s and 6s, that's just what they need to hear. Like, I'm not in there anymore as much as I used to be. So I think it's a great, as I see more kids in our communities get a bad rap, I'd just like to see more activities and stuff. So I will tell you that my knowledge of what's happening there is, what I might read on Facebook, what I might see at the community center on the door or at Shop Easy. And I know when I was part of the board, it's sometimes difficult to put those things together, and I'm just hoping that we can keep trying even when this one thing doesn't work. Let's give her another go and so on. So thanks again for coming and for the volunteer work that you're doing.
Councillor Dussault.
Hi, yeah. Thank you for coming in. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for coming in. I guess one of my kind of answered one of my questions on your codes of conduct and bullying, because I hear there is a lot of bullying that does go on. So I'm wondering how you handle that. Do you handle it right away? Do you hear about it afterwards?
It's situational. I spent 4 months in teaching in school, right? And I was shocked at just the amount of, you turn to the chalkboard and what happens behind you in the 5 seconds your back is turned. And as I say, you don't always hear that, right? The youth center is designed to allow kids to go up to this private place. It's not completely disconnected. It's not like it's blocked off, but you can go up there and sit and talk. And if somebody comes up there and tries to sit down, and you're like, "Oh, you're a grade 5er. We don't like your type around here," right? You don't always hear that, right? So what needs to happen is those points of it can be scary for somebody who's in grade 5 to make that contact, right? So as long as but if they might be willing to talk to Ron, I don't know, he's nice and friendly looking, like a big teddy bear. But the issue is if we don't hear it, we cannot deal with it. There is code of conduct that is posted. We could even have a recital of it if you wanted to, because it was brought along. But the standard idea is just be good, be kind, be accepting, be loving, right? And And that doesn't always happen. Like teens can be cruel sometimes. And, you know, I don't know that it's deliberate. A lot of times it's that I have experienced pain, so I'm going to lash out to, you know, some people have come at me with pointy sticks, so even if you're trying to be nice to me, I'm gonna respond with pointy sticks too. So what we can hear about, we can at least take steps to address. What we don't hear about, it becomes really hard to do, right? I mean, you guys know the same thing, right? The whole evacuation thing, right? It's like everybody, you know, there's people going, yay, that went so good. But there's like 1 or 2 or 5 people who are sitting there going, that sucked, you guys did a terrible job, right? And unless you hear from those people and can talk to them and address them, right? So, you know, we're doing our best.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And you know, as Councillor Julik said, you know, I'd like to see more programs. I hope you guys get more programs going come September and.
So on that topic, so right now, what we have asked for is basically for, let's address this. We've got the running, our job is to run the youth center, right? And then, you know, there's all these activities that come on that are exceptional, right? You know, we don't go skiing every weekend. You know, the basketball courts aren't open all the time. You know, right now, the way that we've got things structured, we're kind of tapped out. Right, our coordinator does not have the time to be doing more than she's doing. So, I mean, you know, there was talk about setting up programs in the community center over summer in the right. That would be great. The way that we're structured right now, we're not set up to do that. If you're like, well, we can do it, great. If you're like, you can do it, it's like, great, we need to hire somebody else to coordinate that though, right? So we need to, it would mean that we'd come back to you with a bigger ask. So, you know, if this is something that you guys want from us, great, but it you know, it's not within our current abilities. You know, we'd have to find some other way to do it. And that would involve just, again, the whole point of what I've been saying is, you know, just that free flow of communications. We need to be able to talk. So if you guys are like, hey, you know, we think it would be cool if you guys did this, great. You know, that'll be, you know, we'll need to hire somebody for the summer months, which will be, you know, will mean that we're going to be asking for an extra X amount. Is that cool with you guys? Yes, no, right, so.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else.
Okay. But I see you.
Okay, I have a few.
Excellent.
So thank you very much for coming in and sitting on a board and helping our youth and our children, having a place for them to go, safe environment, offering up all the events you guys are doing, all the programs and stuff like that. Previous council, not just this council, also reached out to the youth center in regards to other events. I can speak for myself only, but never once expect a youth society to take on more events without more money. And I think that was some of the previous council kind of put that out there. And you know, you can't add more without more, right? You have to have more staff, more hours, whatever. So that's always out there. Because to me, you know, I like to sit and talk about that. You know, is the youth center interested in that? We understand that you may need a higher budget for more employees. Just bring that forward. We just want to try and add, if the youth center wants it. I'm not going to add it if you don't want it. Or council may not want to add it. I'm only one person. But, you know, we talked about, you know, a batting cage or whatever the thoughts are from the youth. I mean, I could put a batting cage in there and never gets used. It comes back from your youth committee. If there's some things, whether it's a batting cage, a couple arcade games, whatever it may be. My direct question would be, is the board names posted with contact information with inside the youth center?
Sorry, I was coughing and I missed.
No problem. The board members, so whoever's on the board, are your names and contact information posted within in the youth center?
In the youth center, I don't think they're posted, no.
Okay. Okay. And then again, I actually had it marked down about expanding and the same concept that was already brought up, you know, whether that's in the curling rink in the summertime or whatever. Do you find your space is big enough?
As a general rule, yes. But things, like I say, things are always changing. You know, we were, right before COVID, we were pushing 400 people a month. Now we're up to about half that. right? So there's definitely room to expand back up to 400 people a month. So yes, in 2 years, 3 years, that might change.
Okay. And do you find as a board, I mean, whether that's up to you guys or not, 25 and a half hours a week is enough?
It doesn't sound like a lot, but it means that, it's not like we can be open 9 to 5, 7 days a week. There have been some discussions about, maybe opening Sunday but as a general rule, you kind of have to start after school, and you can't go much. Parents wouldn't like us if we were open till 3 a.m, basically.
Don't disagree.
So there's a very limited time, and it feels like it's been good, right? We haven't had any complaints.
Okay. And that's fine. That's why I was just asking yourselves, right? I don't have a youth. So it's a little different when I don't, do I talk to the youth and children on the street? Absolutely. Do we get really indulged in their after-school activities at the youth center or the library? I don't. So I don't hear all that kind of information on having young youth in my house or living there all the time. So you already mentioned it, and it was ski trips. So I know a couple of years ago, before as COVID hit, we brought forward, and I know staff has looked into doing ski trips as well. That'll be coming forward again, just so the youth center's advised. I'd rather work with you guys than doing it, fighting against it, right? Instead of if you're trying to do one weekend, we're trying to do it. Let's work together on that, because I think we could be a good team on that ski trip. To me, it's not just for youth. To me, it'd be for anybody that lives in our community that wants to go it. That was my idea, and staff looked into it. So I just want to bring that back forward now that COVID is relaxed, and maybe we can get some ski trip books this winter. So.
Perfect.
That's all I have at this point, but again, I want to thank you guys very much for coming forward. Obviously, the request to council, so thanks for making yourselves available tonight. Councillor, you good? Okay. All right, we're good. Thank you again very much. If there's anything we can do for you guys as well, reach out. I understand you're talking about the fee-for-service possibly in the budget this year, and obviously.
I guess just one comment on that. Just because, as I said, we're closed for 8 months, that means we've got like 8 months of leg room, which means that, if we stretch it, we can get to 12. If we hit 2024 and we're not starting to get money fairly early in the year, we might be coming and saying, hi, can we get an advance on 2024? Because, normally we have enough sort of in the bank, but it's by December, that's going to be getting fairly thin.
So you should have applied for 2023 is what you're saying, Trent.
No, I think we're good.
But you remember when our budgets run to, right? Our budget's not approved till May. So, but when those open up, please fill out your form. Probably ask you to come back in as a delegation, just in case you're thinking of expanding or something like that. And we'd like to hear about that if that's a thought from the youth center itself. So, thank you very much. Okay, on to reports, Northern Health invitation to meet the UBCM. Report dated August 14th, 2023 from the Deputy Corporate Officer regarding Northern Health invitation to meet at the UBCM. Recommendation. Councillor Dussault.
That council receives the correspondence for discussion.
Seconder. Councillor Norbury, all in favor? Carried. Councillor Dussault, did you want to start?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think that would be a wonderful idea to meet with Northern Health at UBCM. I know we have a lot of questions. We want some answers on doctors, nurses. What can you provide for us up here? So I think it is a wonderful idea. I support the idea of meeting with Northern Health. Thank you.
Councillor Julik.
I also would like to be able to make that happen. I would say I'm looking specifically around the primary care network and our local care. We could go on and on about the local care, but the primary care network, I feel like once we get that up and going, that's going to help. But I also believe that after a meeting today that the algorithms that they put in place don't always capture everything that happens here in our community. So that would be one of the things that I would want to talk about. I don't know how that would go into the request. I just see specific topics council would like to discuss. I don't know, that's why I mentioned PCN. I think we could tie the stuff to that itself, but I would definitely like to be in the room if possible.
Thank you. Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Kukalka. I'd echo what fellow councilors are saying about wanting to meet with UBC, Northern Health. Specifically, I'd like to chat with them about our extended wait times in our clinic. I do understand that they say this is the norms across the province, but I would still like to impress upon them that because it's happening elsewhere, it doesn't mean it's okay. 3 to 6 weeks to wait for a illness or condition, I don't think should be the norm or acceptable. And even with the virtual clinic, I just think that we should be still continuing to advocate for our residents and having a quicker turnaround for clinical visits. I'd also like to bring up transportation to Dawson Creek in that we do have some service to Dawson Creek, but for some people, it's just not possible to limit their transportation to Dawson Creek twice a week. I think if Northern Health is creating centers that act as the hubs for care, that they should be also assisting residents in getting there. So if that means we need to start having a larger conversation with Northern Health, ourselves, and BC Transit, or the BC Bus North, or there's a few different transportation options out there. I'd still like to ask them about what is their strategy for people who aren't able to get to these service centers. Thanks.
No, thank you. Yeah, I totally agree with all council. I think it's a meeting that's worth it. We met with them in Dawson. I'll put a motion on the floor that we have staff send a confirmation that we would like to meet with them at the UBCM. Take a second. Or Councillor Julik, discussion. And then after this, we'll put a motion on the floor what our topics are. That makes sense? Okay. Call the question. All in favor? Motion's carried.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Those recommendations made by the councillors, excellent idea. Quite often, the ministries like to know what your questions are in advance. So if you would be so kind, either send them either to me or to our Director of Corporate Services, we can add that to the request for the meeting, and hopefully they'll have that information reviewed before you get to meet with them.
Okay, thank you for that. We're actually going to talk about our topics right now. So they'll be addressed. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor. Would you prefer these in motions?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that for one of the topics for our Northern Health meeting, that wait time to see doctors be one of the topics.
And transportation. We're just going to add them before we second it, and then it's one motion, because I know there are a couple councillors instead of, speed us up. And transportation? Yep. Okay, Councillor Julik?
Primary care network and the algorithm that shows which services come to Tumbler Ridge.
Okay. Councillor Dussault?
Also for doctors and nurses, if we can have get more help up here. And
Recruitment and retention.
retain and, yes.
If we could just have staff read that back, Mr. Woodward, just so we know we've captured them all.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director of Corporate Services, can you read that back?
Hey, yes, so some of the motions were that we, topics is wait time to see doctors and transportation, PCN and algorithm that shows which services are available, and doctors and nurses, i.e. recruitment and retention.
Thank you. Take a seconder. Councillor Dussault, discussion. Okay, just, I guess my only comment will be just remember we have 30 minutes. And it all depends on when they fit us in regards to other meetings. So whether we can all attend all the meetings or not, we'll send whoever we can get to go to those meetings. Councillor Julik?
And if we put those in the invitation, can we make some changes on the fly if after our steering committee meeting, like I know that we've made the motion that we do this. Let's say Dr. Helm comes through at the next meeting and says, this is what I would say is the most important, that we could prioritize that to the people that are actually going to be in the room.
Yep. Yep. Yep, we would just make sure it comes out into council, but we could definitely change the angle of that one. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, RFP and EO published information, report dated August 14th, 2023 from the Director of Corporate Services regarding the RFP and the EOI published information. Recommendation? Councillor Julik?
That council receives the information contained in the RFP and EOI published information report for discussion.
Seconder? Second on. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Julik, want to start us off?
I think my biggest concern, and I'm not sure that I'm seeing here what staff has decided they wanted to do. I don't have a problem with the results being published, like who's getting who's being rewarded the proposal or the expression of interest. My concern was that the actual details were being published, and I felt that puts a limit on, it narrows the field, because then I can come up. So for example, TR Day Society, their RFP was published, so it shows exactly what they're getting paid, exactly what they're doing, that kind of thing. So the next time I come up, I have full knowledge of what it is they're getting paid for, which I don't necessarily believe gives us the best competition. And somebody else has already done all the work, and so then I can just copy and paste.
So I understand it. We're talking what comes in our agenda, so that information is open information within our website. I believe that is why staff puts it in the agenda, because it's open to the public anyways. It's not a hidden agreement. Once the agreements are approved by council and signed, anybody has access to those. So I think when they put it in our agenda, they're just giving us the full information and background information and from council side, from staff side. Mr. Woodward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd refer that to the Director of Corporate Services. You want to try it? Or do you want me to respond?
Well, I can respond.
Okay.
Yes, the information is provided, and as the mayor has said, that is more for transparency as well. The information is public information. It is recorded within their financial statements for the groups that submit them, and it's in the Sophie reports as to what, I don't know if the details, like, the minuscule details, but the information is public.
Thank you. Follow-up, Councillor Julik?
So I read here in the bottom line, though, that it says, in researching other municipalities, some include the dollar amounts, while more include the results of the scoring scale used for evaluation of proposals. So if we're legally bound to put the detailed EOI or RFP, I understand that. If we are not, I feel like, again, that we are opening that up and other people's proposal. I don't believe that we're getting the best proposal possibly, because then somebody just has to come in a little bit lower or copy and paste somebody else's work. I don't have a problem with the scoring thing. Like, I think that absolutely can be public, but the actual details with dollar amounts, I think that's doing a disservice to our community.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but again, I'm going to say to you, you can go on the website and look it up. It's right there. So unless you're talking about not having it advertised on the website either, I think it has to be due to the transparency, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'll go to Mr. Woodward. But I can see, I can understand it from in our agenda point, but I think transparency-wise and by the charter, we have to have that in there. Mr. Woodward?
Did you wish me to respond to that? Absolutely. All the information that's in there is not a technical requirement, but the more information you have to the public as well as to council and staff, it supports the openness to it. It supports the transparency, And anything less is actually considered to be an unacceptable level of municipal levels. And so if it wasn't in the information, we would have a lot of criticism about it. And I know that people do review that information, and they do propose to provide a competitive RFP or EI, and but they have to do all the legwork, and they can look at one that's been completed either in our municipality or any other municipality to provide that level of information, if you like, right? So, but all the information is always there, and it's just part of transparency. So it's hard to get away from it.
Councillor Julich?
So just to clarify, because I feel like I'm missing something. So everything that comes in through the district that has gone out for an RFP or an EOI, I can look that up. So if we had a paving quote come in and it was through an RFP, I should be able to access that one way or the other, because that wouldn't necessarily come to our agenda package, correct?
Mr. Woodward?
Let me refer that to Director of Corporate Services on, there's two parts to that.
The successful bid amount would be made available.
Not all of it.
Online.
Okay, but not all of the pieces, which is the part that I'm kind of objecting to, or that I think, I don't have a problem with the total amount of the RFP being published. I have a problem with all of the details and how that proponent came up with that information. Because to me, they might be offering a service that another proponent might not offer, but once they see it published, they may. So I feel like I get it if the community charter says you have to put out every RFP that you have accepted and you have contracted with, that total amount has to be published. I have no problem, that doesn't bother me so much as the pieces of what happens for them to get to that dollar amount, because I feel like those pieces are private to the individual submitting the proposal.
I guess the question would be, when we issue a contract after an RFP or an EOI, do they need to be submitted fully within our website for anybody to be able to pull off whatever that contract states that they're to do and what's in it and how much? Or can it be only the amount? I believe that's your question.
Yeah, we can certainly change how we do that, for sure. But if someone was to ask for it, then they would be able to see it. And again, the numbers nothing is published until the award has been awarded, the tender has been awarded. So anyone proponents getting ready to do a submission, they're all on the same playing field, unless they're looking at other municipalities, but yeah, no.
Thank you. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Kakalka. So, I understand what Councillor Julich's concerns are from business to business perspective, but I think it's important to recognize about the transparency to the public, right? Are we going to hide or restrict access to information to the general public who are concerned about how we are dealing with organizations that operate within our district and operate parts of our district? And I think that's important for any resident to go in and look up what are these stipulations, what are they supposed to be doing, and have that ease of access, because if we don't have that information available, I would be concerned that we would have people crying foul because we don't have information out there, because information should and can be easily accessible. So I do understand Councillor Julich's concerns. But when it comes to the public, I think a lot of the public are concerned and do want to know. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on that one.
Thank you for that. Okay, any more discussion in regards to that? So I understand where both of you are coming from. My thing is the same thing as, to me, I want to be as transparent with the public as I can be, and is change wrong? No, but I looked up some other communities. I'm not sure what communities staff looked up, and they have the whole proposal right on their website. So, Councillor Clickash.
Are you talking about the proposal that's been submitted?
Been awarded.
Okay, so shouldn't that be open in a closed meeting first before it goes out to the public?
Yeah, so I think what Councillor Julick's talking about is when they come into our agenda. So previously to sending out the, I believe it was Monkman RV campground, TRDs has been running that for the last 3 years. That proposal, the proposal that they previously applied with was within the agenda. I believe that's what she's talking about. When somebody's awarded or when it goes out to an RFP, they have an RFP opening. I believe it's just staff. I'm not sure who was all involved in that. Can ask. But they do their own, they do a staff opening. We see whatever makes the,
So are you saying that all these proposals are open to the public?
Mr. Woodward, the awarded one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor and Council. The information that's provided by all of the proponents, that information is not necessarily given to the public. The person who receives the final one, that information is provided to council, and that information is open to the public. But under FOIPA is a very, very interesting amount of requirements. So if someone applies for one of the other proponents for their information, usually there's a process where they go to the Director of Corporate Services or the officers in charge of FOIPA, and quite often they'll require approval from that proponent to receive that information.
That's right.
And so if they do that, then the proponent, if they say no, then they're not going to get it. And if they say yes, of course, then that information will be provided by us. So there are different circumstances to different rules, or different. There's different circumstances to FOIPA, right?
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Makes sense. Follow-up, Councillor Klakash?
Well, I just want to make sure that after you've reviewed all the documentation from each proponent, that's not going out to the public until you've actually established who the proponent that's going to get the job is, and then that could go out, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, because we've had situations where jobs have been canceled after they were, that they were going to be awarded, and then they were canceled. But that information stayed private so that no one else knew it was on it until, and if it went out, well, then everybody would know what the bid was, and the next year or the next time it comes up, they just bid it from everybody else's experience, and that's not right. I don't care what you say,
Okay, thank you for that. Any more discussion? Okay, there's no motions on the floor. Moving on to delegation request forms, report dated August 14th, 2023 from Director of Corporate Services regarding delegation request forms. Councillor Noberry?
The council receives a report for delegation request forms for discussion.
Seconder. Councillor Julick, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Noberry?
Thank you, Mayor Kukalka. So after experiencing this process for a while, and I think some of you already have a little bit, I would like to see a little more from delegations in advance of their delegation. So what I mean is that on our delegation form, under subject and purpose of presentation, clearly outline the topic of your presentation. We have enough room for maybe a sentence, 2 sentences written or typed. I'd like to have a little more emphasis there. I would like to see handouts with the request to appear. Because like myself, I like to review the information, over the weekend, Thursday, Friday, whatever, so that I can have good questions or ways to engage with our delegations. Because like listening to somebody speak while trying to write notes, it's a challenging thing, I think, to be able to listen well, read, and then still come up with conversations. So, I'd like to see, before people come in, if they have handouts, have it at their request to appear, not the day of, which will happen. We'll find out, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councilor Norberry. I'll just make a couple comments. I actually think we need to go back to having this form submitted and in our agenda, because to me, when I received stuff that in regards from, and no disrespect to Duncan McKellar, but it came this afternoon. You know, I picked my agenda up on the weekend, I went through the whole agenda, and there's no delegation form filled. I know they're coming in because it's on the front pages, but no briefing of what it's about. And then tonight, when I sat here tonight, I received this information, including maps, and then you try to scramble, I think Councilor Norberry hit it on the button there, try to write questions while you listen. I think the same thing happened with the youth center tonight. I think some of those reports and information of numbers and hours and stuff would have been nice to have previously, because I think the more questions would have came up in regards, is there more we could do in regards to that society by assisting them? And when they talk about, well, if you're trying to add something, we need to add more labor, I'm pretty sure we know that, how that works here in regards to if we add more services to the district, it costs us more in staff. That'd be the same concept for a society, but I think we actually need to have the forms filled out, submitted in the agenda, because it gives council, but it also gives the public an opportunity that they know who's coming in, whether it's from Coastal GasLink, the youth center. I didn't even have any names to mention tonight from the youth center. Normally when the delegation form is filled out, I have names on there. So to me, I think we should be filling it out. It should be added to our agenda. Councillor Julik.
Yeah, and I know my concern when we brought this forward, it wasn't so much the form itself, it was that the last name, first name, street address, like that there was personal information asked for of the person coming. So like, for example, if it was, I don't have a problem putting my name, but I don't know that it's necessary for them to have, like for the published information to include my phone number, my address, and such. That was the part that my concern was around. I feel like the first and last name is appropriate, but the rest of that information I don't think should be published. If we want it on a form, I feel like it should be redacted or just not require that, because I would imagine there's some, there's an email possibly, but even that I don't think is necessarily open for public consumption. Some people want to keep that stuff private. So I understand what you and Mayor Kakauka and Councillor Norberry are saying. I would just really like to see that personal information removed from that form.
So I may be able to agree with you when it comes to address. Email, phone number, I think, again, the public has the right. If we have, there's nothing hidden here, and it's an open council meeting. So when these folks apply to come into an open council meeting, they know whether it's Coastal GasLink, Youth Center, the community forest. I think it's right that our public has questions to community forest, whether it's through Duncan McKellar or through their board, that they can reach out to them. They know who they are. Whether that's by email, maybe not their phone number. Like I say, I kind of agree with you in the street address, but I think the other information to me is important. It's no different than when Coastal GasLink was here and she's got money, he wants to hand it out. Well, if her information's there, pretty easy for the non-for-profit societies. They can look it up on their website. Pretty easy to have right in the agenda. They pulled up off our website and are already emailing us. She's giving us her presentation, looking for some of that cash. So I think it's viable to have it on there, whether it's, again, Kenny McCool's here, PRC. Most people are well-known within our community anyways, but somebody might have a question for the individual that's speaking before council. Councillor Julik and then Councillor Norberry.
And I would agree with you when it comes to company names and such. I feel like we have a very strong volunteer basis in our community though. And if there's not, like, for example, a general email for one of our nonprofits, I don't think it's necessary for a volunteer to have to put their personal email there or their personal phone number. Those would be the times I was concerned. Absolutely agree with you with PRC. They generally will have a general email box, general phone number, but if we're asking people to put their personal information out there, particularly if it ends up in a sticky situation, like somebody's angry about something or whatever, I feel like we shouldn't be requesting that to be public. And the other thing is while they're sitting here, if somebody in the chambers wanted some information, we could ask them to go through our corporate officer, who could reach out to that person and say, hey, we've had this request. Are you comfortable with me passing on your contact information? By all means, like I say, business or whatever, for sure, but people with nonprofits and volunteers, I don't think should have to put their private information on there.
Thank you, Councillor Julik. Councillor Norberry?
Thank you, Mayor Kakauka. I tend to agree with Councillor Julik. I think personal information should be the option of individuals, whether they release it or not. And by requesting it on this form or needing it before they can appear, I think we may see people shy away from coming in if they know their personal information's out there. What I foresee is I'd love to have, some of the higher ups in companies coming, and they may not want their information out there readily available, and that's their choice because maybe they don't want to have the hecklers or the 1,000 questions or comments, and I think they should have that freedom to say yes or no. So as long as there's a name and information there, if they want their information to be public, it would be public on their website or what have you. But I think we should still allow them the freedom to have some privacy when it comes to the general public accessing them. So I would be in favor of removing them. Yep.
Okay. Motion on the floor to remove what part, though, bud? Or Councilor Norbury, sorry. Councilor Jelic?
I would like to make a motion that we remove the required personal information on the delegation form. Anything beyond first and last name. In that part.
Sorry.
Sorry, in that part.
Seconder? Councilor Disso? Discussion? Yeah, I'm going to make the same comment. I think an email should be, I'm fine with the phone number and address, and totally agree with that, but I think an email, and then you can put it as option. Put it as an option for the email part, and I just think, I'll use Coastal GasLink. Tons of money to give out, and spoke about it at delegation. If her email's right there, it's a direct link to somebody. They can pre-get it in the agenda. So that would be, just a thought, but. Councilor Jelic?
I'd like to make an amendment to my motion and have email included on the form with optional in brackets.
Okay, seconder on the amendment. Councilor Disso. Discussion on the, amendment. Call the question, all in favor on the amended? Okay. Any more discussion, or carried, any more discussion on the amended motion? Okay, call the question, all in favor? Motion carries. And we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Councillor Norberry? Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mayor Kukalka. I'll just wait till we're all settled because I want to make a motion. Thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to make a motion that as we require all delegations to include handouts or presentations in with their request to appear before council as a delegation form.
Seconder? I'll second that. Sorry. Discussion? Yeah, thank you for that, Councilor Norberry. I mean, I 100% agree. Many times we get delegations in and they bring us information the same night. And again, it's nice to have it ahead of time so a person can dialogue it. Just depends on what it is, but it's nice to pre-read. Councilor Norberry?
Thank you, Mayor Kukalka. Not to repeat myself, but as myself, I find that I like to be able to digest information and come to the topic prepared and informed, and having this information beforehand, I think is critical to have good conversation with our delegations. Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. I'm going to put a motion to remove, under supporting documentation, optional handouts at the meeting. Please bring 10 copies and provide them to the recording secretary before the meeting begins. Be removed. Seconder, Councilor Norberry. Discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Councilor Norberry.
Thank you, Mayor Kukalka. I don't have another motion. I do have another point that I'd like to, bring up for discussion. That's having another way for people to fill out the form. Like I just went on. I've been on the website. It's a downloadable PDF, but not editable PDF. Is there any way? I think it'd be great for us to have either a Word document that somebody can download and work on their computer with, or have like an online form, because. Yeah, making people download it out and fill it out by hand is one option, but I think we should have multiple options for delegations. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Woodward, so just in regards to the delegation form online, you have to print it out, it's a PDF. With our new website, are we able to do it into Word or something so they can fill it out remotely?
Yeah, I'd like the Director of Corporate Services offer up the information on that.
Thank you, Council. I think that is something we can definitely look into. We can have a fillable form online, I believe, and we can possibly do have a Word doc if that's more convenient for people as well. So we'll make it available.
Okay, thank you for that.
As part
Councilor
of our
Gillick?
accessibility.
Sorry.
Sorry, as part of our accessibility strategies as well. So,
Good idea.
yeah.
Councilor Gillick?
And if I could just make another suggestion is to have the forms here if somebody wanted to come pick them up. Because I do know there's folks that don't. Oh, okay, so easy peasy. It's already done.
Okay, any more discussion in regards to delegation request forms? Okay, moving on to 6.4, public notice bylaw. Report dated August 14, 2023 from the Director of Corporate Services regarding public notice bylaw. Councilor Dussault?
The council receives the public notice bylaw report for discussion.
Seconder? I'll second that. All in favor? Carried. Councilor Dussault, do you want to start us off?
I'll let somebody else start off first, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, public notice bylaw for discussion. Anything from council? Councilor Julik?
Okay, I guess what I'm looking for, from what I'm understanding about this, we do not currently have a public notice bylaw. So, and I understand, so I've read through the background, and of course it hurts my head a little bit, because it's all legalese and government speak. But from what I understand here, the biggest hiccup is that it used to be mostly through newspaper, and we need to make it more accessible for reliable, suitable, like I see all of those things. So I guess I'm happy to move on to that council directs administration to proceed with developing a public notice bylaw.
Okay, seconder, Councilor Norbury. Discussion? Call the question. Oh, Councilor Norbury, I'm sorry.
It's okay, thank you, Mayor. I also, thanks for the report. I do think it's important for us to have alternatives and ways to get information out to the public because, our newspaper, it's great, and I'm very, very thankful we have it, but sometimes when you're advertising in a once every 2 weeks newspaper, it can be challenging if we are using that as our only notice mechanism. So being able to have something on the website, something available at town hall or at the community center, and making sure that, because I know we do have a public notice board there, building those into the bylaw so that we can have good information to the public saying here's where you can go, and it's not just digital, it's not just newspaper. We have a triple threat of how we're going to release information, and I think that is great. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Norbury. Any more discussion? So I'll just echo Councilor Norbury. I mean, I read it, I understand it, and I think we got to make it more accessible. I mean, whether it's our local newspaper, if it's every 2 weeks or whatever, and if we're trying to get something out in a timely fashion to make it, we could end up setting us back by 2 weeks because we have to do 2 weeks of advertising, and that means we have to wait for the next issue to come out. So I think this is its staff on some of the stuff that we can move forward on. That's not, real sensitive, but it's we need to make sure we're following the charter. So good catch by staff. Call the question. All in favor? Carried. 6.5, Facilities Use Conduct Policy, report dated August 14th, 2023, from the Deputy Corporate Officer, submitting the Facility Use Conduct Policy, for discussion. How about if I just read the whole thing? Seconder, Councillor Julik, all in favor? Carried. So, make a couple comments. One thing, I want to thank staff. I think a lot of this came forward, and some of the changes in there came forward in regards to complaints that finally became known. There was lots of complaints in regards to maybe some children, youth, adults, in regards to some of the disrespect that was happening at the community center, whether it was against our staff or Mr. Woodward's staff, or volunteer groups that were running different organizations within the community center. So I want to thank staff for that. I think it took a bit once we got together and actually heard some of what was really actually going on. Most people believe that we were all well aware of what was going on, and to me, we were not. Even staff, I sat in a couple of meetings. Councilor Norbury, I know you were there in regards to the library. Sat there as an employee there, and I know it was an eye-opener for myself hearing some of the stories from some of the volunteers, but even from some of the staff. So I think this is clear. I think it sets out some guidelines that we're going to expect from patrons using our community center, and that's whether those are residents, tourists, visitors, family, all that. I think it really sets the what's expected of them, and the repercussions when we treat or go outside the boundaries of conduct that we're going to put in place over there. So again, I want to thank staff. I know it took a little bit of time to get it in front of council, but it's been a long work project in my mind. So thank you for that. Councilor Norbury, then Councilor Julik.
Thank you, Mayor Kukalka. Yeah, I think it's a great thing that staff have come up with this and may have clear, defined guidelines on how to operate. The only comment that I'd like to make, and I don't really have direction because I think maybe staff has some suggestions or ideas on how to put it into effect. But is it reasonable that we allow for other organizations that operate within the community center, say like the Youth Services Society, if they have to, remove a member from their space, that it stick to the community center? Because I think it should, that we allow for that interdepartmental mingling to have continuity throughout the community center. The reason why I say that is that we don't want to just have like a march of lemons. We have somebody who's misbehaving from the Youth Services Society. Now they're free reign in the community center causing problems. So, I don't have any direct direction on adding that into today, but I think it's something that we should keep in our minds, that we don't want to just have one person's problem become the community center's problem. So, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the councilman. We actually marked it up here under the youth society coming in, if our conduct policy kind of mingles with theirs, and if not, if they're willing to have a look at this one and see if it fits within their format. Councillor Julik.
So a couple of things from me. I appreciate the repealing or the suggestion of repealing admin 47 and 22. I like that we narrow stuff down rather than have multiple ones. In regards to Councillor Norbury's concern, what I would rather see myself is that if we had another organization within the community center, that they take their issue to staff. I think that we would be getting on a slippery slope if we gave the powers that be the same rights as the staff there. The community center, I believe, belongs to the District of Tumbler Ridge, and I think it's the District of Tumbler Ridge's responsibility to take care of that. I think it would be appropriate for us to ask staff at the Youth Services Society, for example, to go forward to that person in charge at the community center and say, this is the problem we're having with this person. We would really like for them to be removed, and then staff can make sure it's following our policy. So then there's not pushback, and if there is pushback, it comes to the district rather than those users of our facilities.
Thank you. Any more discussion? So I guess my comments would be something similar. I mean, I think this we should actually have this in front of the other groups that are using our community center, and I kind of mentioned it there after Council Norbury. And it's not about holding up, but we should put it in front of them. And I understand that whether it's a youth service society or another enterprise that's within the community center, that they have their own staff and their own guidelines and their own policies. We should just make sure it kind of fits within this and make sure we fill that out so that we see how from their side too. To me, we run the community center as a whole. It is the district's building. I think when society groups take over certain areas of that, I think we've got to be careful how we ask them to govern their part of the building would be my concern. So for them to go to staff, I'd like to hear from staff on that, because my understanding, reading it's if staff sees it or staff receives a complaint. So I would think whether it is the youth center or other enterprises that are within the community center, if they were to take that complaint to the staff that are on shift, it would follow this policy, is how I read it. And I'm just assuming that, I guess, by reading it. But Mr. Woodward, we can just confirm how that works in regards to other groups that have areas within our community center that are ran different.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor and Council, yes, and I worked on this conduct policy as well too for quite a while, and it's all inclusive, right? It's created for the safety of the patrons that are in there, and it's also a very specific safety factor for all of the groups that are in there, and anything that they need, they'll go to staff for, and staff will follow that standard procedure on every issue that's there.
Thank you for that. Councillor Julik?
So I guess I was just looking for clarification from you, Mayor Kakauka. You were just meaning that you would like to see staff run this policy through those organizations, or just make sure that they are aware of this policy and our expectations around it?
Yeah, so it's not running it through them to get permission. I mean, this is a policy we're going to put in place for the community center, and in respect to the staff bringing it forward. My thing is just making sure they see it, they understand why we put it in, and that we're overseeing the community center. So again, it doesn't matter if it's, I don't want to keep using the youth center. I mean, it's no different to me if they have an issue, they would take that complaint to staff. Staff would then go back to this policy to find out where it fits. It's not everybody is running their own conduct policy within the community center. So whether it's other groups that oversee a certain area within the community center would, again, take that complaint to staff. Staff would follow up on it and do the same criteria. That's my understanding of the policy, is it's community center wide. So that's the ice rink, the curling rink, upstairs, and the youth center. Councillor Dussault?
I just want to also say thank you for this report, and I also agree with the mayor. I think groups that are using the community centers should have access to this policy and be aware of this policy. So I think that's a great idea.
Thank you. Okay, that the amend 48 facility use conduct policy is forwarded to a regular meeting for adoption. Seconder. Councillor Julik, discussion. Call the question, all in favor? Carried. Mr. Woodward?
Yeah, thank you. Director of Corporate Services would like to address something.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to, just to let you know that the policy is currently with our lawyers and with the RCMP, and I haven't heard back from them, so unless there aren't any changes, or if there are changes, you'll be apprised of those when it comes forward for adoption.
Thank you very much for that. Okay. Now, I've lost my sheet of paper somewhere. Okay, 6.6, Animal Responsibility Bylaw Discussion. Report dated August 14, 2023, from the Director of Protective Services, Fire Chief, in regards to the Animal Responsibility Bylaw. Recommendation? Councillor Dussault?
That council receives this report for discussion.
Seconder? Councillor Snowberry? All in favor? Carried. So I'm just going to give an overview to council. I think just so we're all aware, we're here to debate the animal responsibility bylaw and not staffing. Again, we got to, I just wanted to put it out there. I understand that it's fairly easy to go directly to the staff part of it, but we're here to, if there's changes we want to make to a bylaw, that's what we're going to do. It has nothing to do, we're not here to discuss employees. Just want to make sure that's clear. Okay, so Councillor Julik?
Originally, thank you, Mayor Kukoka. Originally, when I got into this, I feel that the current policy is very prescriptive for dog owners, but not for cat owners. And I believe that the bylaw should, anywhere it says dogs, it should say cats. While I know that they're two different animals, there's a lot of the same conditions around there. Basically, like, there can be a dangerous cat, there can be a nuisance cat. In fact, there can be a lot of nuisance cats and a lot of nuisance dogs. So I would like to see that the cat, I'm repeating myself, I would like to see that. I would also like to see more enforcement. As I look at the numbers that we have here, when I say enforcement, I would like there to be less opportunity for written warnings and just getting a ticket. And I would also like to see that before anybody gets an animal back, they have to have a tag, whether it's a cat or a dog, that they don't get the option and the cat, that animal is not released until it is tagged. And if the tag wasn't there, I think we need to look at our bylaw fees and our schedule, because I think there should be a fine if your animal is at large and has a tag but doesn't have the tag on it. I think there needs to be a monetary penalty either way. Like, oh, I have a tag, it's at home. Oh, that's too bad. Then here's a $20 fine for not having the tag on your animal. I don't, like, this just seems to become more and more of a problem, and I don't think it's our citizens' responsibility. I think that it's our bylaw needs to be tightened up, and we need to show that it is the will of council that we do more ticket writing, maybe. I don't know if that's the proper term or not. Thanks.
Oh, that's good discussion. Councillor Snowberry? Oh, I thought I did, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Kauka. I would agree with Councillor Julik on both points. For the cat issue, I know that it may be an issue picking up a cat because, dogs usually you can just say, come on over and they'll hop in the truck. I've seen it, like they'll just hop over, but cats, good luck. Can we trap a cat? Like, what's the legal allowances around that? Can we just, bait them with some salmon and carry them off? Because the issue that we're having with these nuisance cats is that they are going out, they are getting into people's gardens, and they're ruining their food. And I can understand, even if it's not food, even if they're what have you in there, it's still a labor of love, and these cats that are just being left to roam around are destroying people's hard work. So I know that we may not be allowed to do that, so if we can have some clarity if we can, or build that in to say, hey, if we hear about cats at property, 100 Sekunka Drive is having daily cat visits, well, we're gonna bait a trap out there, and you're gonna have to pay $60 to get the cat back. So just food for thought there.
So just on page 37, it does talk about that trapping and just the controversial subject around it. Now, it doesn't mean it can't be done, Councilor Norby, so I'm not arguing that. But it says in the past how we've actually worked with BC-SPCA, and, I know that costs money. It's not a free service that's offered by BC-SPCA, but, maybe it's time, whether you call it a sting operation or whatever, that, I know I've heard enough about the cats and obviously and about the dogs. We've had, I believe there's in the report, there's definitely one bite ticket been handed out. I think, like, seriously, we live in a small community. I preached it on the evacuation, how we're all like family, but I don't want your family pets in my house. So to me, I think council has to give clear direction we want. If we want, and I believe our residents want it, it's time to do something in regards to the loose cats, the nuisance dogs, the unleashed dogs, the dogs running at large. So I think it's up to council, and I, if I may, Mr. Uber, just to find that out, I believe the last time that we did the operation with the BC-SPCA, there was a mount there, and I can't remember. I know I was on council when SPCA came in. But I just think it's time, to me, as the mayor and sit on council with all you guys, I think we owe it to our residents in regards to the cats. I know my garden, my flower beds, it's crazy. It's really, really getting out of hand out there. And then I see the same thing with dogs lately. Like, I know for a fact that Bylaw was called out on the weekend because there were some dogs out at the Quintet Mine site, Security Shack. Stuff like that. I see people around town, they're walking their pets down the walking path with dogs off the leash. Doesn't mean my dog's friendly. Your dog might be, but mine's not. That's why he or she may be on a leash. I've heard that lots from the residents, like, you don't know how a dog reacts while it's on a leash and your dog's not on a leash. But, I just think it's time. It's really sad that it was really good, I thought, the last couple of years. We haven't really had a whole bunch of loose dogs, I'd say. The cat thing was a new thing with this licensing process that we've tried. But it's this year, the numbers are increased. I would think our BAO is probably spending a lot of time, dogs at large, dogs off leash, dogs, whether they're attacking other dogs or biting a child. But I think it's time we do something for sure. Councillor Dissone and Councillor Clickash.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you're saying there, Mayor, and other councillors. I agree with all of it. And not to mention, there are people who would like to go and walk their dogs who can't because they're afraid of large dogs walking around. And I'm also wondering, too, instead of giving written warnings and we give the ticket, maybe also include the bylaw with that ticket so the person is understanding why they are getting that ticket. Because if they're not aware of the bylaw and they're becoming irate, then that is one way to stop them in their tracks right there. And the other thing I was wondering about this, I don't know if this is okay, you can stop me if it's not. Would it be possible to change bylaws, have them off on a Monday, Tuesday, and have them on a weekend? See if that might make it.
We're going to talk staff. We'd have to go to closed.
Okay, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Again, that doesn't mean it's not a possibility. It's just the thing we have to be careful is when that's why I tried to say that we just talk about the bylaw. If we're going to talk about labor, we would just have to go into closed. It doesn't mean we can't look at something different. It just has to be done at a different time.
Okay, so I will just stop with the ticket and the handing out of the bylaw then. Thank you.
Councillor Clickash?
Yeah, I agree with you, Mayor. This, the reason, I think we really have to do something about the cats. And I know I got 6 or 8 that come in the yard all the time. And we have to clean up after them. And I'm tired of hearing about it, so you either take the cats or take the wife. One of the two. So.
It's on a live feed. You all good, Councillor Klikash?
That's it. Yep.
Okay. Mr. Woodward, I didn't come right to you, but I'm gonna. If we could just get some information, and maybe staff doesn't have it tonight, and that's fine, but if we can get the information at a later time, sooner than later, would be when the SPCA has came in and worked with our with your staff in regards to whether it's a sting operation on loose cats or wild cats, I believe is what they came in for. What the cost of that was, just so we have an idea.
I'm going to pass this over to the Director of Protective Services, who's going to comment on it, but I'd like to just make one comment on it from my experience. When you have a lot of dogs at large and the officer in charge of enforcing these is a lot of people are complaining to her, to the particular officer, as well as there's a lot of complaints in the community about dogs at large, and people are afraid of taking their dogs on leashes and stuff like that. In the Lower Mainland, I'm aware that a lot of the municipalities went to a muzzle bylaw, and the reason why they went to the muzzle bylaw is that it's a safety issue for everyone that's involved, and so when the dog is muzzled, there's usually no interest in the activities of the dogs. That's a nice way of putting it. There's no fighting and there's none of that. And no one's afraid of the dogs because the dog's muzzled. There's no way that they're the only thing they can do is bite. So to me, that's an issue of protection. It's an issue of safety, and it's an issue to recognize that people who want to go out and walk with their dogs, that they're able to do that and they're going to be safe. So that's another issue. So I'd pass it over to the Director of Protective Services for his comments on everything.
Your Worship, Council, through the CAO, I'm going to unpack a few things that Council has talked about during this conversation. So first off, I very much appreciated, this is what I was looking for as out of this report, was some really good conversation as to Council's wishes and direction as we move through this problem. You're not the only people that we're hearing or that are hearing complaints from the public. We often hear them as well in my department. So I'll start off with the SPCA as the mayor had the question. So the SPCA will not, under any circumstances, come to Tumbler Ridge, pick up cats, and take them to Dawson Creek. That is not their purview. What they did the last time they came out was with a feral cat program. They came out, they apprehended upwards of 40 cats. They took them, they spayed and or neutered them, and then their mandate is that they drop them off in the exact same location they picked them up. So that is what happens with that. They do not take them, they do not rehome them or anything like that. If they're surrendered to them, that's a different story, but that was for a feral cat program. In the history of the Protective Services Department, prior to me being the director, the district actually did undertake trapping of cats. We bought traps, we rented traps out to the public, we had them go through, and the SPCA was very against this because there are very, very specific guidelines when it comes to trapping, such as the ability, or we would have the mandate that we have to check the traps. We have to make sure that they're humanely done. So now we're talking about all of the extra stuff that we would be doing, even if it was in the evening, now increasing what our bylaw officer would have to be doing. So they work an 8-hour day, they'd set out 2 traps, now they're being called for a 2-hour overtime, et cetera, whatever it would look like in terms of making sure that the cat is being cared for in the appropriate manner. To, I believe it was Councillor Julick's point about failure to affix licenses. We already have that in our animal responsibility that is actually in both the animal responsibility bylaw and the municipal ticket information. It has a $50 fine associated to it. Nuisance cats. I think this is a terrific thing. Honestly, we have no problem in doing this. When this bylaw was done, cats were something that we weren't getting a lot of issue with, but we knew we were having cats that were at large. This bylaw largely came in when we were doing the feral cat program. We wanted to see what licensing would have, if it would have an effect on that, and if somebody caught a cat, whether that's in a homemade trap, which we've had people do, we've had them in commercial traps, people have gone and purchased themselves. As long as they have the mandate that they're looking after the traps and they bring them to the fire hall, we're happy to take that cat. We take it, if it has a license on it, that's great. If it doesn't, we house them. We have 2 at our animal control facility. We actually retrofitted 2 of the older kennels. So we have 2 cat condos that are there that we can hold up to 2 cats in each one in that. And we still have the ability to deal with that. Even if there's a requirement for us to go after hours and look after that, that's something that we do now anyway if we get an impounded dog, for example. So we're happy to do that. We can amend the bylaw to do nuisance cats, high-risk cats, because you're absolutely right. They can be brought out into their own sections. A lot of that was legacy that actually came out of both our own previous animal responsibility bylaw and the template that we use as part of that. Less warnings, more ticketing. So while this is something that we certainly can, as I've stated in my report, we've used the education as the premise, and we get a lot of compliance that way. We get, I'd say, better than 75% of the compliance through educating people with written warnings. It's the rest of the 25 or 20% of these animals that are repeat offenders that are why we're talking about it today, right? Irresponsible pet owners that are non-compliant, and really at this point, all we're doing is fining. Even with the sliding scale, we're getting to the point where we're into the hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for dogs that are either at different level or cats rather that are at different levels. And it's just a cost of doing business for these pet owners, right? They pay their money, they go. I honestly think that the fact of getting if they're not licensed, getting licensed before we give the animal back is something we should have in our bylaw. I'm happy to make those changes. With that, the only caveat to that is that we do not actually handle the money and process the license. So if we get an animal that we have to return at 5 o'clock when the bylaw is off their shift, how do we do that? We don't have a point of sale. We don't process the information. We actually don't even have the tags with the fire department. All of those processes are handled through town hall. So how does that work logistically? I'm sure we can make out some type of a process for it. If that means whatever, I'm sure that we can go through that. I think I'll pause there for now, just in case that sparked anything else from council or anything like that. This is, like I said, I very much appreciate this. This is the conversation that I wanted to have, because I think you're all right. I think this is what we need to be doing to make our streets better for residents, all that kind of stuff and everything. I think your heart's in the right place, your minds are in the right place. So I'm eager to hear your comments.
Yeah, I'm going to start off. Thank you very much for your comments. And I agree that you may have 75% compliance. But to me, you'll have 100% compliance when I get a ticket for no dog tag, a dog at large, and if I don't buy a dog tag, I'm going to get it again tomorrow. To me, I don't know anywhere in Canada that any municipality, unless Brian, you can, or Mr. Orville, tell me that there's somewhere in Canada that you do not have to have a dog tag. I'm not going to say cats, because cats are different. We added that recently. But to me, anywhere you go, doesn't matter what municipality you move to or what city you move to, you must have a dog tag. That is the first thing I always bought when I owned my dogs. As soon as I moved to the municipality, first thing I did, where do I get my dog tags? Because I don't know of a place. And to me, I understand where staff comes from, but when I count up the warnings, there is a ton of warnings there. To me, that takes just as much time as writing tickets. To me, I'm more about, and I get it, and I'll hear from the residents, oh, got a ticket because you told them to give me a ticket. I'm not putting it out to any individual in the community, whether you're visitors or tourists would be different. But whether you're a new resident or not, we all know you have to have a dog ticket. A cat may be different. That is, every municipality is different when it comes to cats. We started that up a couple of years ago just because we were hearing the cat problem, and I believe that's when that feral operation came in. And I thank staff for clarifying what that was. But to me, I just see the problem that we just need to just ask for enforcement. I want to kind of stay out of a clear direction, but to me, when I counted up, I was in and talked with Mr. Woodward, and I counted up all the warnings and stuff like that. It just, to me, didn't understand it. We had the conversation of tell me a place in Canada you don't have to have a dog tag. That's how I looked at it, whether you're moving into Tumbler Ridge and you're new, maybe there has to be a little bit of a leeway. They have the week or whatever. I can't remember. I've read so many municipality animal control responsibility bylaws this weekend. I can't remember which community it is. I believe it might be Dawes Creek, city of Dawes Creek. I want to say they have 7 days. I believe it's 7 days there. The SPCA does a lot of their enforcement, so a little bit different than internal enforcement. So they obviously outcast that part in regards to paying for a different service. But that's just my thoughts on it. I appreciate what staff's comments are. I agree with Councillor Judick in regards to, adding cat in most of the areas where it makes sense. I mean, there might be the odd place, maybe it doesn't, but I think, that's, we can give that as a motion where we want to see it. I just think it's time, and I understand from, I'll come right back to Councilor O'Brien, I understand from staff side in regards to if we decide to start doing this trapping thing, and I read the report, and it talked about, and that's why I brought it up, and I brought it up to Councilor O'Brien because he's the one that mentioned it, but just about the perception of that and stuff. And to me, if that's something council wants to do, I just think we got to be prepared to add unbudgeted funds, and no different in regards to if we do change the bylaw that you don't get your animal back unless you have a dog tag, that, there's going to be budget constraints there in regards to making sure that we know that there's, staff would have to come into town hall, which, I'm fine with that. It's something to me that we have to do. That's just my thoughts. Councilor O'Brien and then Councilor Julick.
Thank you, Mayor Kakalka. So I'll be honest, when it comes to bylaw, I think if there's like victimless issues, then we sort of let those things lie. But when it comes to the dog issue, I would agree with yourself about seeing more enforcement, with at loose dogs in the community, and then we start generating more awareness by people. I can appreciate Chief Curry's comments about education is one of the best tools in our toolbox to fight this issue, but that's only the people that are being made aware of the situation. For every dog that owner gets a warning, there's 10 that don't, in my opinion. And we need to create that knowledge in the community that if your dog is caught off leash in our community, you're getting a ticket. And that word will spread fast. And I think that's what we should be doing, so that we create that awareness in our community that there's zero tolerance now. Because from my experience, I truly believe that our community is wanting more enforcement on this issue because people are generally afraid to take their dogs outside, because they may have an interaction with another person whose dog's off the leash and my dog's friendly, well, mine's not. Or people who have had conflicts in the past, that never goes away. You get bitten by a dog, that never goes away. And by still allowing just warnings to be given, I think sends the wrong message. We're past that point now, so thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Julick.
I think we're all kind of on the same page here. I guess I would like to say I think implementing or asking for more enforcement within this policy or in this bylaw does not preclude us from still having an awareness campaign. Maybe people aren't aware of how their stray cat or their cat at large affects people's gardening. We see it because we see it on Facebook or whatever the case that is. I think we could still do that public education the same around my dog on a leash, and maybe my dog has great recall, so I don't have him on a leash, but that other dog across the street, he's a rescue. So I think it's about I think we can still do that piece about getting the information out there, as well as adopting this bylaw or changing the bylaw. And in that note, I would like to make the motion that council directs administration to begin the process of amending the animal responsibility bylaw number 692/2020.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Clickash, discussion. Okay, all in favor? Carried. So if I may, Mr. Woodward, just in regards to that, and again, I don't want to get into the depths of this, but, we talk about education and stuff, and I know when we did the bear awareness and all that, there was a cost to it. So my thoughts are, I honestly, I don't want to get in depth with it. Do we have enough within operational budget or somewhere within our budget to start a campaign in regards to cats concerns, the dog concerns, that we can do some mail outs or whatever staff comes up with.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we do. We do have the funding for that. I know with even in the administration budget, there is some funds available still there. And I'm not too sure on the protective services side if Mr. Curry would respond to that as well.
Your Worship, Council, through the CAO. So operationally, in order to do a bylaw awareness campaign specifically to animal control, or animal responsibility, I should say, that's definitely doable within our operational budget. I would, and I'm going to go against a lot of stuff that we preach here, but bylaw enforcement is already a thankless job. We wear a lot when it comes to I shouldn't say we, our bylaw enforcement officer wears a lot when it comes out to the backlash that comes from the perception from the public. So this would be one of the few times that I would actually request getting into the kitchen from council, and actually a directive from council. If you want zero tolerance for animal control issues, that allows us, not that we need the out, but it says this is the mandate that we've been given from mayor and council. Understanding the importance of the instances and the seriousness of these infractions when it comes to this, because then it takes the subjectiveness away from the bylaw enforcement officer.
Yep, that's coming next. Yeah, and I appreciate those comments from staff, and I would never. I understand it's that staff takes a lot of heat, and to me, if council wants to put a motion on the floor that we are no longer issuing warnings in regards to no dogs on dogs or no dog tags on dogs, dogs on loose, or cats with no cat tags, it definitely has to come from council. I have no issues with that. Before I go there, I would ask the question: do we need a motion as well in regards that we want a campaign done in regards to advertising best we can in regards to the concerns we have in regards to people's cats, the loose dogs, no dog tags and no cat tags. I think from one resident, I probably received 40 emails in a month. That's one resident, and I think that individual is not the only one that has emailed me. And I do. I know a majority of the people in this community want us to do something in regards to cats and dogs. So my comment, I guess, Mr. Woodward, do we need to make a motion to do this campaign in regards to the animal responsibility bylaw? And I mean, don't take me wrong, I know it's a big bylaw. I think I'm more concerned about the cats and the dogs. Not sure how council feels, but to me, I think that's what's at the forefront is cats and dogs. Do we need a motion from council to have staff do that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe it would be a very good idea for council to put that motion forward. I believe that in the sense of having people understand what the campaign means. So I think you could have two motions. I think one, you could have a motion where staff is required to send out information and have what did you say? Not a campaign, but
Education campaign?
An education campaign. And we would put that out and for the month up until maybe September the 15th. And then a caution to the community that after September 15th, I'm just throwing a date out there, that after that there will be a zero tolerance factor on dogs and cats that are at large.
Yeah.
Something like that?
I'm not looking for that one, but I have a different idea for zero tolerance. I'm not sure what council thinks, but I'm going to put the first recommendation out that staff starts an education campaign in regards to dog tags, cat tags, dogs at large, cats at large. The best way we can do. Seconder, Councilor Norbury, discussion. Again, I don't want to get into this because I don't think this is my expertise. I think staff did a great job when it came to the bear awareness issues that we had. Use the wrap line. I understand we don't have that process for the cats and the dog tags and all that. So if we could just leave that with staff, I think staff feels the same thing we are, whether it's out of the bylaw office or not, but somebody is feeling the heat, just like this council is and the rest of our community is feeling in regards to pets. So, any more discussion? Councillor Julich, sorry.
I would just, I guess, rather than having narrowed that focus, I would, and probably doesn't need to be changed the motion, but I would like staff to be able to do whatever they need to do in that motion, whatever that looks like for them, whether they want to discuss animals at large or nuisance animals, that kind of thing, whatever information needs to look like.
Yeah, I think they've got it.
Yep.
You have a question? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Kakalka. I'd like to make a motion that we have a zero tolerance for dogs at large, dogs without license, or animals that attack, chase, or threaten people.
Okay, seconder, Councilor Julik. Discussion, Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Kakalka. Thank you, Chief, for bringing this forward. I am 100% willing to take any heat that Bylaw gets, hand out my cards. I will happily talk to them and say, this is something that maybe you might want because you're upset about this, but I've had so many people bring up issues about dogs in this community that we need to keep this community safe for everyone. And I can get into a big lecture, but I'll leave it there, and I'll save it for them.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Julik?
I just have to reiterate that I absolutely do not want any staff to take the heat for this. If in the awareness campaign, wherever you need to post it, that complaints need to go to council, I'm good to go with that. I absolutely understand where Chief Curry is coming from in that regard, and it might be easy, might be hard, but I want to make it sure, like Councillor Norbury said, that we're the ones who take the heat.
Thank you for that. I got myself and then Councilor. So my thing is I like to have cats. You mentioned dogs. I think we have the same concern with cats. Cats large and cats with no tags. So just a thought process, but to me, I know you mentioned dogs. Go to Councilor Dissau, then Councilor Norbury.
Yes, I just reiterate what the mayor and Councillor Norbury and Councillor Julik have said. I am also willing to take the heat for that because this is just such a big problem and we need to fix it. Thank you.
Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Kakalka. I'll make amendment to include cats into the aforementioned motion.
Okay, seconder on the amendment, Councilor Dissau. Discussion on the amendment. Call the question. All in favor of the amendment? Amendment carries. Any more discussion on the amended motion? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Any more discussion in regards to animal responsibility bylaw? Okay. 6.7, let's talk. Just a discussion about the format and date for the next Let's Talk. So I brought it up earlier, I think it was last month, in regards to doing something in regards, just a fire update to the residents in regards to the evacuation we had, you know, how all that transpired and the timelines and the timeframes and how that process went down and worked. To me, I thought of doing that as our Let's Talk. I was thinking sometime in September. I'm not sure what council thinks. I'm not sure, Mr. Woodward, if you could tell us, do you know when the ice goes into the curling rink?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right now, the ice is going into the arena. As soon as they finish that, they should have the layers finished probably, I'd say probably a week from now. And I think once they've got that finished, then they begin on the curling rink.
Okay, thank you. So I guess the thought process there, I was thinking of using the curling rink. We may have to use a trend. I just think we're going to need a bigger area than room 4 and 5. Just so we can make sure we can get as many residents available to it at that time. Councilor Julik?
We could possibly use one of the school gyms as well, just to keep in mind.
Yep, thank you.
Because I agree with you. I think there might be a few more people there, and I would agree that that might mean we need to allow for some more time, and maybe have that be the only topic. And so far as time, I'll make it work.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And I'm not sure if council is okay with during the day, like on a Saturday. Not sure what the feeling around that would be. So I know, not to put staff in the spot, it might be a little short notice to try to do it, but you know, maybe we always talked about doing that welcome home thing, which we had problems trying to do that with all the heat and the dryness, which to me, I think we're still dry, but I believe when we talked around with staff that night, there, you know, we did talk, you know, maybe September-ish. So I was thinking we could do something on a Saturday where we do a big community barbecue and then do the Let's Talk afterwards. I'm not sure what council thinks, but just a thought. We could discuss, I mean, I don't even, we can't even discuss this in September. We'd have to plan it. Councilor Dissau and then Councilor Julik.
Thank you, Mayor. I just agree with everything that you said. I think a Saturday works if it works for everybody else. And yeah, let's do this.
Councilor Julik?
I guess, and I'm with Mayor Kakalka, I don't want to put the onus on staff. I just wonder if asking staff the logistics and what that looks like, if Chief Curry's comfortable that we're through fire season. Because I know that was one of the concerns about having a yay, we're back in order to get evacuated again, so.
Mr. Woodward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any specific date areas that we're talking about? September is actually a very, very busy month because you're also going to UBCM, so it's not an ideal time. So October, I think, would be a better date, maybe somewhere in that time period.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Kakalka. I like October onwards, just so we can have time to get the information out there. And for myself, I'd like to see as much information about, if we're going to be talking the fire, we have as much information available from what we did locally to what was available, just so that we have just the backup. Because I know there's a lot of emotions out there, and emotions are emotions, and I think the best thing we can do is approach this from a information gathering and giving session, because some people may have their feelings about certain things, and we can say like, well, did you know within 20 hours we had BC wildfire here with a XYZ, right? Or we had this out there, because I think there is misunderstandings and misconceptions about how much we actually had here, because when mobilization happened, it happened quickly. Not to say that we can't have improvements, but I'd still like to have that information readily and clearly available for residents that are there, so they can see, wow, the system, did okay. Thanks.
Okay, so I think we'll talk about that in early September. I know you have a question. Well, when we're done here, we do a question and answer period, and then you can by all means ask questions. I apologize not to offend you. So maybe we can just have this on the agenda in September and then give some direction to staff and stuff. And I know Chief Curry and I have been talking just in regards to some of that background information that you talk about. So I think we'll do that. We'll add it to the agenda in September and then try to move forward. Okay, it's not on here tonight, but question and answer period.
Yes, Christian McCormack, resident since 2017. Clear and present danger, we've had a fire within a few kilometers of the town. However, we have a fire break that hasn't been maintained in 20, 30, 40 years. If you're aware of the fires in Fort McMurray, they had a fire break about 100 meters. It was insufficient. They expanded it with heavy equipment to 300 meters. So I don't know if anyone in this town is interested in picking up a chainsaw, and I certainly am, and we have a lot of work to do if we're going to clear this fire break.
Yeah, so we actually had a delegation earlier tonight from Community Forest, from Duncan McKellar, and again, I can pass you on the information I have on my desk. You can read through it. So they talk in regards to the fire mitigation the district's done, and it was reevaluated in 2022 by the province, and they find that the subscriptions that we've done are, I don't want to put words into his mouth now, but they are sustainable. Like that's all they expected from the province side of us, from us. They talked about it tonight too in regards to that right now there's with the fires they're seeing now, it's actually traveling 8 kilometers in front of it. Debris or the sparks and stuff. So just expanding that, obviously Fort McMurray, I understand when you mentioned that. Now it's like you're looking at 5 miles that this is coming. So, or 8 kilometers. So
It's not practical.
Not practical. So that's why they did these fire prescriptions. And I have some maps and stuff. But it's definitely open information. I'm not sure how much we had out for the residents.
What are the wind conditions when it's traveling?
That I can't answer. This one here, I know, I don't want to get into it too deep because I don't have all the information in front of me because it's my office. But on the Thursday morning, because of the winds coming from the east going west, about an average of 25 to 30 kilometers an hour with gusts up to 50. I believe it traveled 8 kilometers in 3 hours or something is what I've heard.
I'm not a fire expert. I'm only taking S100. Would a fire break give firefighting a chance to mitigate what's coming if we had some buffer?
Yeah, I think with the fire mitigation, the community forest.
Fire break where I live is completely overcome.
Yeah, I don't think we have fire breaks. We did fire mitigation. So we haven't done fire breaks, just fire mitigations. Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to make a point of order. Like during question and answer period, we allow one question for residents. This sounds like a good conversation for after the meeting. I'd be happy to interface afterwards. But we are in a council meeting, and we do have a code of conduct. So.
Okay, thank you for that. So, all right, take adjournment. Council Norbury?
Sorry, I turned myself off. That the Monday, August 14th Policies and Priorities Committee meeting should be adjourned.
Seconder, Councilor Dussault. All in favor? Carried.